for having a guest like Dr. Mandel on my show. They were just thrilled. Some were telling me how they rolled off the chairs by some of the humor he used, and some were telling me they never sat and cried by some of the hardcore facts that he presented and told it just as it is. He was giving us the real thing. That's no question about it. And I think that's the reason why Dr. Mandel is so beloved, why people flock to him, read his column, and are so appreciative of his contributions that he has been making. And I want to tell you that, you know what, this is between the two of us, ladies and gentlemen, you and I. The sweetest thing about this man is his simplicity. This is not a fellow who walks around waving a flag, but Dr. Mandel is the kind of a man that you can talk to, and you can touch his heart, and you know that there is a fellow with an awful lot of compassion. So tonight, you're lucky again. We got Dr. Mandel back. He's a busy fellow, but because of our deep friendship, and the fact maybe that I'm a little bit a Landsman because we both write columns in the same Jewish press, he sort of had to do something special for me and be with me tonight on the show. Let me just give you a quick rundown on who Dr. Mandel is. First of all, he is a psychoanalyst. He's a graduate of the Alfred Adler Institute. He's a columnist, of course, in Jewish press, writing for the last 14 years on problems in human emotions. He's a very famous lecturer. He's lectured all over the world. He's an author of 19 published books, most of them out of print already. As the Twig is Meant is one of them. Another one is 13. Another one is How to Be Happy and Married. The fourth is Take Time to Live. A fifth is Coping with Crises. By the way, I hear there are about 30 copies left on Coping with Crises, and if you'll send $5 to the Jewish Press, I understand you can get a copy of this book. And if I were you, I would get it as quickly as I can. He happens to be also the principal, the secular principal of the secular department in the Yeshiva Torah Semis in Borough Park, and he is a member of the American Guidance Counselors Association. Incidentally, this is not part of the show, but I just would like to get this in. Those of you who would like to speak to Dr. Mandel or need her services or would like to make an appointment with him, you may reach him through calling the Jewish Press or Ulster 16768. That's his professional number, Ulster 16768, or even if you call my number. We have every interviewee, it fills out in the questionnaire in my office, and we know exactly where to reach these people because there are follow-ups. There are people of all walks of life who usually come back to us asking us if they could get in touch with this or with that gentleman who was on the show or with this young lady or with this institution and so on. Dr. Mandel, welcome, and thank you so much for your great performance yesterday, and I hope you wouldn't do any worse tonight. I'm going to get started on a hot subject. I understand you mentioned yesterday that you have problems of intermarriage, and you told us of a very, very distressing case. You also told us you're involved with people who are on drugs, and you've had some very interesting experiences there too. I think I would like to hear something about your work in the field of intermarriage, since this happens to be one of my projects that I, as you know, Anti-Shmut is one of my works that I do, and I've been very active in it. Let me hear something about your experiences, Dr. Mandel.
I'd like to begin by saying that I don't feel that marriages between men and women of different faiths work out. And I might tell a story, Rabbi Hecht, that will bring a chuckle to you because you were really involved there. We always have a feeling that intermarriages take place between an 18-year-old college boy and an 18-year-old college girl with a 20-year-old college boy. But this story of intermarriage concerns two grandparents. A man once came to me, a very religious man, and said, "My brother has fallen in love with a shiksa." And I said, "Well, how old is your brother?" And he said, "My brother is already a grandfather. His wife died, and now he fell in love with a shiksa. And I want you to break it up." So I said to him, "All right, bring him over and I will talk with him." And he says, "No, he doesn't go to any psychoanalyst. The only thing he would go to is to a rabbi because he would want to convince the rabbi to convert his girl to become a Jew." And I said, "Well, I'm not a rabbi." And so he said to me, "Rabbis now go around with the word doctor in front. Let's make believe that you're a rabbi one night." Frankly, I don't believe this is the approach to a case. But since he was a friend of mine and pleaded, I said, "All right, I will be a rabbi for a night." I had always wanted to be a rabbi, and maybe if there is a life after this, who knows, maybe I'll be a rabbi in the next world. And so there comes in this man, and he came immediately with his girlfriend. He looked like a grandfather, and I found out that she was a grandmother. She was Italian, incidentally, and her Jewish was as grammatically correct as mine. She had lived among Jews all her life, and she said to me immediately, "I'll be a good Jewess, don't worry. I know Milchdik, I know Fleischdik, I know Parvin." She knew all the words. And to make this very quick, I try to break it up. Naturally, I try to tell him, what do you need her for? And then I told her, what do you need him for? You're a nice-looking woman. You're so nice-looking. And no, she was in love with him, and that was it. And he kept threatening me, if you don't convert her by December the 12th, I'll marry her anyhow. I don't care if she's converted or not. I'm just doing this for my brother. And I said, okay, I'll convert her. But first she has to pass some tests. So I gave her a book on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and I said, when you finish reading the book and you're ready to take a test, call me. I figured that could keep her going for about a year. 3 weeks later, she called me, I'm ready. And there she came, and I asked her questions, I tell you, and she knew the answers. He said to me, Rabbi, you've only got 2 more weeks. If you don't convert her, I'll marry her anyhow. That's where you come in, Rabbi Hecht. I called you on the telephone. I said, I have this fellow, Rabbi Hecht, and I'd like you to convert this woman, because he said that if we don't get her converted, he'll marry her anyhow. In your answer, and I hope I'm saying this right on the radio, your answer makes verbal history. You said to me, I don't care. If he marries Jesus Christ himself, I'm not going to convert her. But after a while, we got someone who did. And that was an awesome moment in my life. This rabbi, too, was kind of timid about converting her in New York, so we went out of state. We found a mikveh out of state, and from another room he called out the necessary questions, and the place echoed back with the necessary answers, and what do you know, she was a Jewess. And at the end of the first week, I went to visit them, and I saw the Milchdik refrigerator and the Fleischdik part of the refrigerator, and 3 weeks later she emptied out his bank book and disappeared, and she hasn't been seen since. And that's maybe an outstanding case, but they very seldom work out.
But would you say, from your experience, is this on the upgrade? And if so, what happened? What do you think is the tzur over there? Why is a Jewish boy attracted to a non-Jewish girl, and vice versa? When the Yiddish Kinderlach have such chen, they're such sweet people, and they're so geschmack. Why do they have to go looking for these other types of people, which are really not our kind?
I'd like to give you 3 different answers. Number 1, I am against girls and boys being sent to colleges out west, down south. I don't believe that an Orthodox boy or a girl can be sent to a college where, even if there is a smattering of Jews there, they are far from Yiddishkeit. They don't know any Yiddishkeit, and before long, this Jewish boy strips himself of every vestige of Orthodox that he has. And so keep your children at home, even if he goes to Brooklyn or to Hunter or to Columbia or to NYU. Perhaps the antidote of the good Jewish home might offset the poisons that he might receive from fellow classmates. That's number 1. Number 2, and we have an intermarriage rate in some communities of better than 50%, 1 out of every 2, and I think the rabbinate ought to wake up and try to do something about it. The second thing is, and I've had a boy tell this to me in my office, he wanted to marry the shiksin. The mother says, I'll die in front of you, I'll drop dead right here on the spot, and all of that. And he says, Ma, what are you so excited about? She eats pork, you eat pork. Grandma ate pork. She rides on Shabbos, you ride on Shabbos. What's this issue suddenly about being a Jew? You're no more Jewish than she is, and she's no more Gentile than you are. And therefore the parent who, in his own mind, claims that I don't want my child to marry a Gentile, but lives a Gentile life himself or herself, the further you remove the pot from where the fire is, the cooler the religion will become. Then there's a third, this idea of, I don't mind if she goes with a group. There's group dating where you find non-Jews within the group. And I remember being in a panel discussion out in Connecticut where they were discussing the fact, should our children be permitted to go on group dates with Gentiles? And the rabbi, some of the people there, now let me be very careful because I don't want to excite the rabbinate. Some of the people there felt, why not? It's only a group. And I got up in my own plain, simple Reality Therapy Way said they go as a group to the date, to the skating rink, to the baseball park, but they don't go back as a group. They go back in pairs. They go back coupled up, and that's where the tragedy takes place. If we want to stamp this out, we stamp this out two ways. First of all, make certain that our children know that there's one way in which they can fulfill us, and that is at least marrying someone of our own religion. Secondly, we ought to make children proud that they are Jews. I walked on that parade 2 weeks back, and I liked the way some of the children were saying, "I am a Jew, and I am proud of it." And if you don't hear me, I think I'm saying this wrong. I am a Jew, and I couldn't be prouder. And if you don't hear me, I'll yell a little louder. I am a Jew, and I couldn't be prouder. And if you don't hear me, I'll yell a little louder. Well, man, I'm glad that they yelled that song all the way from 59th and 15th Avenue right down to the United Nations practically, or further. Because if they're really proud that they're a Jew, and if they really understand what was been done to Jews, how can you marry the great-grandchild even of a person who burned your people, who treated them like barbarians, who played with children on the top of bayonets? So these are some of the reasons, Rabbi.
Very well said, Dr. Mandel. I don't know. It puts a shrill down my spine. Dr. Mandel, what experience did you have in the field of drugs? Could you tell us something about that? You know, the accepted concept is that we don't have much of that problem amongst Jews, but you and I both know that that is not true. You know that the Jew covers it up, and the Westchester kid is the guy who's hiking his father every day for the dough to buy the drug and so on. You tell it the way it is. I mean, you have such a beautiful way of saying it. Tell our people, let them know some of the problems that are hovering right in our midst, and people don't even begin to know about them.
Before I do that, I reminded myself of the young yeshiva boy, or the young boy who runs around saying, Rabbi, please ask me a question, I have an answer. I thought you would ask me this question, you haven't, and time is running away, maybe you won't. As Jews, we have faced all through the centuries a very difficult lot. In fact, the man who said, "God, I know we're your chosen people. Do us a favor, choose somebody else for a while," because we were always hearing of Jewish blood, one massacre after another, and the Gentile world, a cynical, sophisticated, cruel, inhuman, hateful Gentile world who feels Jewish blood is free, mind you, capturing a school where only children are held as hostages and are destroyed without any hesitation. The Kiryat Shmona massacre, and the Gentile world says nothing. And if we blow up a couple of empty houses, then we're already condemned unanimously by the entire United Nations. So there is a question in the minds of Jews. And this fits in with drugs, why not? And it fits in with intermarriage, and it fits in with orthodoxy. Why is it happening to us? And nobody can give the answer. And I tell you the truth, I ask myself questions too every day of the week. And I've adopted a simple philosophy. I say it takes only three things to make a person happy. One, something to do. Of course, that you like to do. And whatever you're doing, you better like to do it, because if you have to do it, you'll do it with greater ease. So I say something to do. Secondly, someone to love. Love your mother, love your parent, love your shul, love your people, love your religion, love your wife, love your girlfriend. And finally, something to hope for. And as a Jew, we hope for peace, eventual peace. We hope that the countries of the world will understand us as a people and appreciate our values. And so I have an 8-line poem that I wrote. And since you're never going to ask me if I wrote a poem, I'm going to read it anyhow. If the pattern of life looks dark to you, and the threads seem twisted and queer, to the one who is planning the whole design, it's perfectly plain and clear. For it's only a part of God's loving plan when he works in his threads of gray, and they'll only make brighter the rose and gold of another happier day. I am convinced that God knows what He's doing. I'm convinced that He loves us. I'm convinced that in the long run, even when He says no, it's for our benefit. And I'm convinced that the time will come when we Jews will be appreciated as the greatest benefactors of mankind, that we have made greater contributions to the development of civilization than any other people, and we made it with both hands tied behind our back. We made it with ourselves being blindfolded. We made it with quota systems. We made it from ghetto neighborhoods. We made it with poverty, and we did it ourselves. We didn't burn down neighborhoods, and we didn't make protests, and we built ourselves into a glorious people. It had to be this way. If not, we wouldn't have survived the thousands of years of our survival in Gullus. And that's what we Jews should think about. Now, when it comes to this drug situation, and I didn't get lost. I knew we'd get back to drugs. I have had several patients who, youngsters who dealt with drugs, and any list of them. The ordinary one, of course, is pot, and then they go into all sorts of pills and cough medicines and LSD and other stronger drugs. If you catch this thing early enough, of course, they can be treated. There are drug centers. Some children, some youngsters benefit, and some youngsters become even greater addicts in the drug centers. So I'd like my answer to take two forms. Number one, how did it occur in the first place? And having had it occur, how do you treat it? I think that we're living in a generation where we know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. I don't think our children are goal conscious. I don't think they're inner motivated. I don't think they're thinking of a family name. I believe their lives are empty. I think there's a lack of purpose, and I know some of the people who are listening to me are rebelling and are angry at what I'm saying. I'm not talking to those who don't fall prey to this. If you sit there and you say, listening to me, I'm not this way, I say, surely, because you're goal-oriented, you do understand your family name, you have a good education, you're not only learning Torah, you're living Torah. But unfortunately, statistics tell us that we do have a great number of drug addicts, that we do have a great number of people who are entering into marriage. We do have any number of people who are giving up religion. We do have a great number of people who are going to organizations, Jews for Jesus, all sorts of freak organizations which can only appeal to them because their own lives are empty. And if their lives weren't empty, the other organizations would not develop. We have to fill our children with what education should be, and we should see that they're properly educated. My own definition of education is education should aim to teach creative living. There's beauty in being alive. There's a purpose in being alive. And you were created to fulfill this purpose. And if we fill their lives meaningfully, this may not happen. If you want to make a mink coat, Rabbi, you have to start with mink. It may not turn out to be a good mink coat, but I tell you, no matter what workmanship you have, if you don't start with mink, you can't make a mink coat. And the same thing goes for a cholent. You need the proper essentials. If you don't use them, it'll never be a cholent. So this is number one. Let's begin. Parents, teachers, rabbis, community leaders, grandparents, anyone who is involved with the education and growth of children. Let's have before us not how many multiplication tables there should be, not even how many Blat Gemara they should learn, but how can we inculcate in these children a love for Yiddishkeit, a love for a living, and a purpose in life with proper goals, with proper values, so that they won't have to go for release to pot and LSD and whatever else. As far as treatment is concerned, I have treated it somewhat successfully. You know, if a criminal lawyer wins 1 out of 8 cases, he's a great criminal lawyer, because everybody who goes to him evidently must have committed the crime. And when you can treat successfully even a few of the drug cases, then you're doing well. I have treated them with hypnotherapy. I use hypnosis. And with hypnosis, and I have a case record of at least 2 cases that have been treated successfully, with hypnosis, with depth hypnosis in any event. And we also use hypnosis for an alcoholic problem. We also use hypnosis to stop people from smoking very successfully. And any number of people I have helped who want to lose weight and who say, "Doctor, I love food, I can't help myself." And with hypnosis, we get them to lose weight because we give them foods to eat and foods not to eat under this hypnotherapy situation. So under hypnosis, we give the person a chance, first of all, to relieve himself of his subconscious problems. And then we give him the strength, a crutch, if you will. It doesn't matter. We give him the crutch that will help him. We make the drug abhorrent to him, hateful to him, despicable to him, even describing the drug under hypnosis, of course, as something that would make him nauseous so that he can't use it. Now, that in itself isn't a cure. But if I can keep a woman, let's say, or a man, not eating cake for 3 months or not smoking for 3 months, he has to start. At least he sees he can live without smoking. He sees he can sustain himself without smoking, and the same thing goes with this drug problem. So that's the way it's treated.
Well, you've expounded on the subject, not just on drugs, but you really touched on many other. And I think since you did touch on education, which I think is very, very significant, I think we are all ears now to hear from you what, in your opinion, are some of the things that you think should be stressed in the education of children. You being an educator yourself, and based upon the vast experience that you've had with both children and parents, I think there is much that we have to learn from you tonight, Dr. Mandel, and if you will be good enough, tell us what you would set up as a set of guidelines in the field of education.
Now I'm really in my own field. I have been in secular education in the high school level for 35 years. And I've been in the yeshiva for 35 years, and that gives me 70 years of experience. But I want you to know I'm not 70 years of age, and these gray hairs on top of my head are the result not only from my tsaros, but from everybody else's tsaros that they hand over to me. In every home and in every classroom of the world, Rabbi, parents and teachers are putting together ingredients which 30 years later can blow up the whole world. These time bombs being fashioned in our homes and schools are mixtures of ideas and habits and children, the most highly combustible combination known to man. 25 to 30 years from now, these bombs may burst into a new era of creative living for mankind, or they may fizzle out like firecrackers. We in education journey toward the future, hoping that we will learn how to put meaning into children's lives. There is a holistic approach to medicine, you know, treating the soma and the psyche together, not one without the other. There is also, or should be, a holistic approach in education, and I surely have tried to do this in Yeshiva Torah Emes. It's a combination. We're not specialists in the school. We can't teach these children alone. We need a combination of the home and the street and the community and the friends and the shul and the rabbi and the school, to mention but a few of the institutions and people that should be involved in education. I'll tell you what all children need. They need, number one, to feel safe and unafraid, to feel that people care about them and are interested in them, to feel understood as children and accepted as people, to make them think well of themselves, and to inculcate in them a trust for people. That's number one. Number two, to realize. We have to teach children to realize that rules are needed to make things run smoothly. Rules aren't made just against them. They must accept authority without cringing before it, and believe that they are being treated fairly and justly. They ought to form a close group relation among themselves. Children need to have a chance to enjoy cooperation more than company. Children need a chance to play, to be active, to relax their feelings, to make some choices of their own. Children must be entrusted with responsibility. They must take some real part in adult affairs. They must realize that everywhere people are trying to work out the same problems. That's just as a starter. That would be my aims of education. And when I meet with my faculty at Torah Semis, I try to tell them, teaching them multiplication or geography or the capitals of the world or the exports are not nearly as important as teaching these children how to live and to get pleasure out of life. If we want the years ahead, and which parent doesn't, if we want the years ahead to be better than the present years, we must educate our children, now listen very carefully, to know what is good better than we have known it, to think more clearly than we have thought, and to act better than we up to now have acted. I have in that book called Coping with Crisis, and again this sounds like a commercial, but I don't mind repeating it, and again I could say if you send a $5 bill to me at the Jewish Press, don't send it to the Jewish Press, because if you will, you'll just get a half a year subscription to the most wonderful newspaper in the United States of America. But I have a poem in that book called Coping with Crisis, and it says all of life's values. If you want to make your life living, and who doesn't, worth living, then you have to know when to say yes, you hear, and when to say no. If you know when to say yes and when to say no, then your life will be a happy and productive and adequate one. And I think teachers and parents must also understand when there's a time to say yes and when there's a time to say no. I've been told by rabbis, the good rabbi is not the one who says treif, 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 treif. But the good rabbi is the one who really it's easy to say no, it's easy to say treif. But if there's a chance that it isn't, and the people need that chance, then they should be given that chance.
Dr. Mandel, you've made a great contribution tonight, no doubt about it. But let me ask you one other question. We don't have too much more time, but I think about a minute to a minute and a half maximum. Tell me one thing, in your opinion, why is it that we have so many problems today with children? We have problems with them mentally, and we have problems with them from even in a physical sense. I think we have a sicker generation. That's what I think. Tell me, what are you, in your opinion, what is this coming from?
I'm going to give you a quickie answer. It's the generation gap. But wait a minute. I don't mean the generation gap as you mean it. I mean there's a generation gap when a father wants to be a friend to his son. And in trying to be a friend to his son, there's a generation gap, because after all, which 14-year-old needs a 40-year-old friend? And which 40-year-old needs a 14-year-old friend? So if the father acted like a father, this is my seat, you don't sit down. And if I'm passé, then I'm passé. When I'm here, I want quiet. And I too have a right to listen to a radio program that I want. I want my rights. And the mother should serve the father first and not the children first. And parents should be parents. If parents will be parents and demand to be treated like parents, then we won't have a generation gap, and we'll have respect and derech eretz, and life could be more beautiful than it is.
Dr. Mandel, you've made our evenings more beautiful than they were, and we're so very grateful to you for being with us. Don't forget, you have an open door with me for and when we come back for the new season for several more appearances. I'd love to have you back. I know our people will be waiting. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any comments, if you want to write to Dr. Mandel, you can write care of this station, WEVD 1700 Broadway, or with Jewish Youth, 824 Eastern Parkway, Brooklyn, New York. Get in your applications for Camp Amuna for the 4 different camps. And until tomorrow night at the same time, may God bless you all.